The fundamentals of object-oriented programming is here everything will be treated as an object. That's object-oriented concepts. So objects pass messages to each other. So one object uh, passes the message to other object, and it tells what to do with the received message. So all this, every object has a state and behavior. So what this is going to do. So that's what we are going to see here. So what are the objects? So object is just an entity that has a state and behavior. It's a physical entity. Basically, it's a physical entity. You can see every object you can see. And for example, dog, cat, vehicle, laptop, chair, table, everything that physically exists, that's an object. So if you take a dog, it has a age, color, name, and behavior like eating, sleeping, and running. So these are all the behaviors of that dog. So all these different objects and how you can represent in the software. That's what we are going to discuss here. And state tells us how the object looks and what properties it has. That's a state means. Understand, these terminals are very, very important. State tells us how the object looks and what properties it has. Even human also, right? Human being also has a name, height, color, city, and all these are properties. And what he is going to do, that's a behavior. Behavior tells us what the object is going to do, what object does. So that's the behavior. So we can actually represent a real world dog in a program as a software object by defining its states and behaviors. So that's what the real world entity you can represent in the software by defining its states and behaviors. Software objects are the actual representation of real world objects. Software objects are going to represented real world object, and memory is allocated in RAM whenever creating a logical object. Whenever you create object, the memory will be created in the heap memory. So I already explained that part. An object is also referred to as an instance of a class. What is object definition? An instance of a class is called object. Instantiating a class means the same thing as creating an object. Instantiating a class means creating an object. Same, both are. Instantiating a class or creating an object, both are same. So the important thing to remember when you're creating object is the reference type should be the same type or a super type of the object type. So the reference variable data type should be same class type or super class type. That's the object creation point you need to remember. We'll see so what a reference type is later in this coming chapters. So what are all classes? Classes is a template or a blueprint from which objects are created. That's a definition. You already know this definition, the class definition. Imagine a class as a cookie cutter. Cookie cutter means this is the template. Based on this template, you are getting a cookie, so many cookies. So same way, one cookie cutter is the class, and objects as a cookies. These are all cookies prepared. So these are the objects. But from this template, the objects are derived. So that's the at least real world use case I'm giving. Just understand what is a class. Class is a template. So how to prepare objects? So based on this template, you can create many objects. So class define the states as instance variables and behaviors as an instance method. That's a class inside. You will define as instance variables and behaviors as a instance methods. You will do that. And instance variables also known as a member variables. Classes don't consume any space. When you create a class, it doesn't consume any space. So that's the difference between class and object. When you create object, the memory will be created. And to give you an idea about classes and objects, let's create a cat class that represent the states and behaviors of real world cat. So this is the one, public class cat, and a string name, and int age, string color, string breed. These are the 4 instance variables I have declared. I didn't assign a value, just declared the variables. Those are instance variables. How can you say these are instance variables? Just below the class, above the methods we declared. And I'm declaring some instance methods. Behavior of cat I'm writing. So void sleep, so it is sleeping, void play and it's playing, and void feed where it's eating. So this is the 3 methods and few instance variables, a template we prepared. Now you want to represent particular real world cat. So what you need to do? Here is the one. Now we have successfully defined a template for cat. So let's say, and this we have 2 cats named Thor and Rambo. Okay, so this Thor is sleeping. Thor is sleeping and Rambo is playing. So how can you represent these 2 things in your program? Right? One cat is Thor is sleeping, another cat Rambo is playing. How can you represent, how can you define them in our software program? So this is the one. So we need to create 2 objects for that class. So you need to create 2 objects, each object. So you can represent one object, you can represent with a Thor object, another is Rambo object. So for every different type of object, you can create one object, right? So this is the way we are going to create 2 objects. Cat Thor equal to new cat, cat Rambo equal to new cat, right? This is this object representing the Rambo and this object representing the Thor. And now you can define all their states and behaviors. So you created object. Now what will happen immediately? So this will go and save in the heap memory, and all the instance variables and instance methods of this class will come and store in this object. Now, so we need to define the states and behaviors. Now you created object, right? So Thor.name, you can give whatever the name you are giving, that will go and store in that memory address. Thor.age, so 3 you are giving. Thor.breed, Russian blue, and Thor.color, brown color. So all these values will store in that memory address. And another one is Rambo object I'm defining, and I'm calling Thor.sleep because it was sleeping, so I called that method. So object reference dot sleep method. And again Rambo.name, I can give a different name, same variable, but I'm changing different, but object is different, right? So now Rambo is assigned. Rambo.age 4, Rambo.breed main Queen, and Rambo.color brown. So Rambo.play. So this Rambo is playing. That's why I'm representing with this object. That method I'm calling. So each object values are going to be differently. You can pass. So you can give a different values at runtime for each object. That's how you can represent a class and objects. So let's take the difference between object and class. What's the difference between object and class? Object is an instance of a class. Class is a template or blueprint from which objects are created. So that's a difference between object and class. And next one is object is a real world entity such as pen, laptop, mobile, bed, keyboard, mouse, chair, and so on. Anything you can represent in the real world, that is an object. The class is a group of similar objects. Class inside you have so many objects: non-static variables, static variables, non-static methods, static methods, constructors. All these are group of objects will be there. Object is a physical entity, class is a logical entity, and object is created through using new keyword, and class is declared using class keyword. And object is created many times as per requirement, class is declared only once. Every time you can create only one class. Next time you can create a new class, not the same class. And object allocates memory when it is created. Class doesn't allocate memory when I create a class. And there are many ways to create object in Java. One is using new keyword, another way using new instance method, clone method, and factory method, and deserialization. These are all the different ways to create object. This is the interview question also. So how many ways you can create object? One is using new keyword. The another way is using new instance method you can use to create object. Clone method also you can use. Factory method, deserialization, all these concepts you can use to create object. But for creating a class, there is only one way, that is defining a class. There is only one way to define a class in Java. There are no multiple ways to define a class. Okay, using class keyword only you can define your. That's all about class and object. And the principles of object-oriented programming is, so we have seen already class and object, and we have encapsulation, inheritance, abstraction, polymorphism. These are the few differences between all OOPS concepts. We're going to discuss all these one by one. What is the difference between object-based programming languages and object-oriented programming languages? So object-based programming languages, right? So which support only few features of OOPS, which doesn't support object-based language, doesn't support all the OOPS features. But object-oriented language supports all the OOPS features. It supports all the OOPS features. Next we have a, so object-based language doesn't support inheritance concept, but object-oriented programming language support inheritance. And Visual Basic is an example for object-based programming language. And Java is an object-oriented programming language. And for more example for this is JavaScript, VB are example of object-based language. And C#, Java, Ruby, Python, these are all object-oriented programming languages. So this is the main difference between object-based and object-oriented programming. So what are the advantages of OOPS? OOPS makes development and maintenance very easy, and OOPS provides a data hiding, and OOPS avoids the duplicate code. That means you can reuse the code, and OOPS shows functionality to the user and hides internal logic. So these are the advantages of OOPS concepts. So before going to the encapsulation, first OOPS concepts. So let's write the cat class. So to define our cat, how you can represent in the software and how you can create object, we'll see that. So let's create here, and we'll create a OOPS concept, OOPS programs package. A different package will create. So I'll create a different package, OOPS programs. Let's create a class and package at a time. So I'm going to create a, okay. So let's start. Click new class. So here I'm giving OOPS programs package, and here is we're creating a cat class. Let's create the cat class. You can create object in the same class, otherwise you can create it in the new class also. It's up to you whichever you want. Let me create in the same class. First I'll define instance variables, right? Cat class instance variables. Declare instance variables. Anything you can declare like this, right? Int age, string, name, string, color, string, breed. So these are the instance variables we have defined. 4 instance variables. Now define instance methods. So objects means always instance variables and instance methods. That's objects mean. We already discussed these points. Now, so public void sleep, that is sleeping. Simple one. I'm not doing much complicated here. Protected void playing. Cat is playing, and so void feeding. So cat is feeding. Cat is eating. You can say something like this, right? So I defined my class. This is a template. So cat template I created. Now I need to represent so two objects. How can you represent? So let's create two objects. First object is Thor object. So represent in the Thor cat object. So how can you represent? Create object for the cat class. Object for the cat class. So how can you create object? Cat Thor object equal to new cat. So this is the one. And so we can define so Thor object dot. So you declare the values now. You declare the values. So age is 3. So Thor object dot name. So that is Thor, and all this will go and store. These values will go and store in that memory address. This memory address it will go and store. So whatever I am representing here. So those are all values will go and store in that cat object breed. So that's how you can represent Thor object dot color. I can say brown, right? So you can represent Thor object. So what it is doing, it is sleeping. So we just call that method. If you want to represent one more object, create an object for another thing. Create object for Rambo object. So by creating one more object, cat class. So cat, so Rambo object equal to new. See, every object, if you want to represent it independently, you have to create object for that class. To create object for that class. And so let's create object for that class. And how to create object? So we'll see that here. So one thing is Rambo object I'm representing here. So Rambo object dot is I can give 4. So Rambo object dot name I can represent Rambo. So like this, each object can differently you can represent Russian blue and Rambo object dot breed. So I can give color white color. So this is the how you can represent. This was Rambo object. I'm calling the methods. You know how to call the methods, right? That each object reference you can use to represent that states. These are all states you define, and you are calling the methods. That object, what it is doing, you are calling with the non-static methods. That's objects. Both objects are different, but this object data type is same class type. This object data type is cat class type. What is the data type of this object? Cat class. What is the Thor object data type? Cat class. So this is the how to create objects and how to assign your own values. Okay. So that's all about objects creation, and even other class also you can create object and you can define your own thing. So I think Venkat, you asked right, how can we pass your own different values for each object? You can pass your own values. This is the way to pass. Here you are not going to define the values here. You are not going to hard code the values here. But when you create object, then you can pass your own values. At runtime, you can pass your own values. That's this only possible with instance variables and instance methods. Any questions? What is encapsulation? First concept. So encapsulation is the process of wrapping the data and code together into a single unit. That is called encapsulation. What concept you will use to represent the data? Using variables concept, you will represent the data. You will use variables to store the data, right? Using variables, you will store the data. Variable concept you will use to represent your data. I'm using this variable name to represent my data. Variable name to represent my value. This is my data. 3 is one data. 4 is one data. This the string is another data. That how I am representing with a variable. Variable concept. Okay. So the code means you will write the methods. To represent the code, you will use a methods concept. To represent a data, you will write by variable concept. Variables you will use to represent the data always. Where you can find all this code and data together into a single unit. Where you can find this data and code in the one area. What do you call that?
Class.
That's the answer. Class. Class inside you can find the methods and data. Just now I told you. Instance variables you will declare in the methods, madam. Somebody told methods. You will declare instance variables in the method. So inside the class, you can bind together this methods and variables as a single unit. All where you are finding them in the class. So the encapsulation is called binding the data and code as a single unit is called encapsulation. So class is an example for encapsulation. But there are some rules you have to follow to create an encapsulated class, and how to bind them, we'll see that. So it's just like a capsule, you know, right? Capsule medicine. What will happen inside? There are many medicines will be combined together and put it in the cover, right? It's a capsule. So this is a technique so that helps keep instance variables protected properly. So your data is protected properly. This can be achieved, encapsulation can be achieved by using private access modifiers that cannot be accessed by anything outside the class. So that means you are hiding the data. Wherever security is necessary, you have to use encapsulation process and declare all your variables private. And then nobody will see your data outside the world, outside your class. So in order to access private states safely, we have to provide a public getter and setter methods. So we are using public setter and getter methods to access this private data. Through methods you can access, not directly in another places you can access. In another class you cannot access this private data because you made it a private access modifier for these instance variables, and methods are going to be public, so that methods you can access anywhere. And this, how you can set this instance variable values through these methods. Public setter methods are used to set the value, and to get that set value through getter methods you can get it. And that's our setters and getters you are going to create in the class. For every variable, one setter method will be there, one getter method will be there. And a setter method will set or update the value of that variable. Getter method will access that value of that variable. So that's the encapsulation process where you will use this encapsulation. You can go anywhere there is a security you need for your data. You can use this encapsulation concept. And all your banking related data completely applied by this encapsulation. Your bank balance, bank account number, everything. So they will made it as a private variable. Private to long account number, private to string account holder name. And all these are private variables they will make. And methods, they will make it as a public so that you can access anywhere. Now you are going for any ATM and you're accessing your card. How is it possible? Only your card details you can access. You cannot access other person details, card details. Why it is happening like that? It's a tightly coupled and tightly binded with your data and your methods, whatever the method you are calling, and that will be pulled from you from ATM. That's how that software is installed on the ATM center. That's why you are able to access only your data, your card related data. So the banking is the best real-time example for encapsulation. And okay, any doubts here? Encapsulation. Anywhere you need security for your data, you don't want to give permission to even other person also. Here people will use encapsulation. Completely hides the data because of private keyword. That's why private access modifiers, I told you very clearly in the beginning. Private is accessible in that class only, and you cannot access outside the class, private variables. So that's why encapsulation, if you want to achieve, you should make your variables as a private, and methods you should create a public methods, and public getters and setter methods you have to create for every variable. One variable has two methods. One is a setter method, another one is a getter method. Setter methods will starts with a set keyword, and getter method starts with a get keyword. Setter methods are void methods, getter methods are return type methods. So keep this point in mind. This is the very, very important. Return type methods, I hope you understand. And void methods, so you know that void methods never give returns a value. Return type methods returns a value. And these getter methods, what type of data it returns? What is the data type you declared for that variable? That data type that getter method will return. Okay, so that's encapsulation means. So how can you achieve the encapsulation? By declaring your instance variable as a private, and methods you should declare public. You will create a setter methods and getter methods. Setter methods are void methods, getter methods are return type methods. So a setter method starts with a set keyword. Getter method starts with a get keyword. And getter methods are return type methods. Setter methods are void methods. Any questions here? Okay. So let me show you. Yeah, any questions?
ఇక్కడ మీరు ప్రైవేట్ దాంట్లో క్రియేట్ చేసినాక దీన్ని సేమ్ క్లాస్ లో పబ్లిక్ లో క్రియేట్ చేయమంటున్నారా మళ్ళీ ఎన్కాప్సులేషన్ ది?
Same class variables methods in one class only will declare, madam.
అవును, కానీ మీరు ఇక్కడ పబ్లిక్ లో ఇచ్చేయమంటున్నారు కదా.
Methods you are going to declare public. Methods you will declare public methods. You will declare methods as a public, and variables is a private variables, so that you cannot access that data outside the class. Then what will it, then how can you access? How can you set that data? Through public methods. And method you can call and you can set that value, variable value, wherever you want. Through methods only you can set the value for that variable. I'm not going to declare value for initially. I'm not going to hard code value. I can set my value at runtime also. Then I can get that value wherever I want through getter methods. That's what it is going to happen here. In one class only, you will declare your variables as a private and methods as a public. Not in another class. So every variable has a two methods. Set, for example, assume that there is a private string name variable is there. For this name variable, I can create two methods. One is set name method, public void set name method, parenthesis, curly braces start, set the name. And another one, getter method, public string, this name is a string data type, so return type also string. Get name method. That's how you will create methods. With the variable name itself, you will create a methods. Set variable name, get variable name. That's a setter method name, getter method. Any other questions?
No, Andy.
Sri Lakshmi?
Sir.
So what
No,
is
sir.
your understanding?
Sir, my net is little low, so I understand is we are creating two methods in encapsulation and variables we can create that is private only we can use, and in methods we are methods are public, and those are setter and getter methods. Setter methods, the keyword is set, and we are only wide concepts we are using that set, and getter methods we can use return type methods and
Okay.
that one only.
Yeah, fine. So Lakshmi, you got it?
Yes, sir.
And see, let me give you, if you don't use encapsulation, what will happen? If you don't use encapsulation, what will happen? I'll show you first. Then the importance you can understand why you need to make your variables private, and so how to implement them. Let's see this. Say, so there is a record shop is there that sells music albums of different artists and stockkeeper who manage that albums, right? So first album class will create. In the album class, album name, album artist, so price, number of copies, these are the instance variables, but all I made it as a public. Okay, then two methods we created: sell copies, order copies. Two methods we declared. Now stockkeeper, so another class I created, I am calling the stockkeeper. So name I'm going to set, and stockkeeper name using this constructor. Class name and constructor name is same, right? You are setting with a constructor this name value, and I am calling. So this guy is managing, right? Stockkeeper is managing the album. So I'm creating a method manage album, and album object I'm passing here, and comma, name of the album, artist name, price, and number of copies. So these are all the void method we created here. Okay, so now let's represent in the, so this with a class, then we can see that. So if you look at this right, this figure, and you can understand a stockkeeper class can access the album classes states directly, as album class states are set to public, because we are setting the all these variables as a public. So that public means he can access, anybody can access, right? So stockkeeper class is accessing this album states. Album class states means variables you are accessing directly here. So what will happen? So we'll see that. What if the stockkeeper creates an album and sets us states to negative values? So stockkeeper is giving a negative values. Then what will happen? And this can be done intentionally or unintentionally by a stockkeeper, right? So to illustrate this example, and let's understand here. So I'm first creating a public class album, public string name, public string artist, public double price, so public int number of copies. So these are the four instance variables I declared. I didn't assign a value here, so catch that point. And public void sell copies. If number of copies greater than 0, so you reduce the number of copies by 1. So one album has sold. That's what I want to say. Else, no more albums available. So this is the logic I have developed for the sell copies. Okay. Then there is another method, public void order copies. Int number of. So how many copies you want to order? Number of copies plus equal to number of copies plus number. So this variable, the local variable, the parameter is a local variable you are adding. So that number of copies will be ordered. So this is the album class development. So one class we developed it. Then I'm creating a stockkeeper class, another class, stockkeeper class. So stockkeeper has a name, right? So he has a name, and that name I am providing by this parameter. So the parameterized constructor I'm taking here. So this I told you constructor in the beginning classes. I explained you how to create a constructor. The class name and constructor name is same. So public construct class name, and the value I'm passing here. This dot name equal to name. So just hold on few minutes. I'll explain what is meant by this. Okay. This dot name equal to name. So this right side one represent this parameter, and this dot name will represent this instance variables. That's this keyword advantage. This dot name always represent the instance variables, and you have a same. So local variable parameter, instance variable name, both are same. Such cases, to distinguish the parameter and the instance variable, if you use this dot instance variable, so that's always represent the instance variable, and the right side one is going to represent this one. So this is the constructor, and this keyword I will explain you still more. And as of now, just understand this dot name means this part is the instance variable, and right side one is a parameter name. Okay. Now, so I'm creating a private public void manage album. Album object I'm passing here, comma, string name, string artist, double price, int number of copies. Okay. So these are the variables I have declared. Now see that this is the album object, right? Object reference, album dot name. I'm directly able to call the album class states. Album class states I'm calling here directly. Album dot album class name variable I'm calling, because why you are able to call directly here, because that was a public. So we declared here public. This is the public variables. That's why that object reference dot the variable name. So I'm assigning this name, whatever the name you're going to give, that name I'm assigning. Album dot artist, I'm setting my album artist, so with this value. And album dot price, so price you are setting. Album dot number of copies, so this number. These are all parameters, are local variables for this method. So these values I am assigning to album class instance variables. I'm assigning these values, local parameters, I'm assigning to album class instance variables, and I set all the album class variable values, and then I'm calling one by one. So album managed by this dot name. This dot name is the stock keeper name will be represented. So this is representing current class objects. What is the current class now here? Stock keeper. Stock keeper object means name is the stock keeper object, one of the object. So name is the instance variable, is the one of the object. Instance method is another object. This dot name and album name. So you are directly calling the album dot name, album dot artist, album dot price, album dot number of copies. So you set here values, but you are directly calling the album object dot album class variable you are calling here, because that was a public. So that's a public variable. That's why you can access the variable anywhere, right, with object reference, because of public. So that object reference dot, I'm calling that variables. Now, so I'm going to another class I created, main class I created, and the main method. So I created object for stock keeper. I created object for stock keeper. See that stock keeper John Doe equal to new stock keeper. So he is the stock keeper name. So I'm passing the value here. So this is the constructor part, right? I told you very clearly while explaining this entire part. Now this is the class, and this is the object reference, and this is entire thing is called object, but only this part is called constructor, I told. So now they here constructor is parameterized constructor. Constructor is of type parameterized constructor. There are two types of constructors. One is default constructor, another one is parameterized constructor. So this class has a parameterized constructor, you can see here. This is the parameterized constructor. So that means parameter is there. So this value I'm passing here while creating object for that class. So if you have a parameterized constructor in the class, while creating object for the class, you have to pass that parameter value in the object line. So that name value I'm passing here in the object line. Now, so you call that. So John D dot manage album, and new album object I created, slippery when wet, Bon Jovi. So slippery when wet is the album name and Bon Jovi is the artist name. And see the negative values I passed, the price value and number of copies values. So we passed the negative values for price and number. Is it possible negative values for the price and for the copies? Can you give a negative values for the price and this number of copies? Is it really
No.
exist?
Never.
Because
No,
there is no
never
control
exists.
here. That's why he is giving his own data. There is no control at all. Album class doesn't have any control because you made public so that people everybody is calling. Why? Because you made public those variables. You made public. That's why they are calling their own data. They are giving their own data. There is no control at all. So that control is missing here, and that's why. So you have to change this thing, and we'll see that. And then album name is Slippery When Wet, album artist is Bon Jovi, album price is -1000, album number of copies is -50. So all these things, so you are giving, this is a wrong, this is not acceptable, right? Negative values cannot be acceptable. So album price and number of copies cannot be negative values. Then how can you avoid this situation? So this is the where we can use encapsulation. So you can control your own data to not to allow other people to call your instance variables. Only in the methods you call and you define those methods. So that's what where encapsulation comes here. So complete control will be there. So how can we do that? So in this scenario, we can block the stock keeper from assigning negative values. If they attempt to assign negative values for the album price and number of copies, we will assign them as a 0.0 and 0 values. So how can we do that? See that. So album class I'm redefining now. So whatever first we defined public, now I'm making all the instance variable as a private. That's the encapsulation. How can you achieve encapsulation? Make all instance variables as a private so that nobody can access directly, other class people. And make the setter and getter methods for every variable. Set name, get name. Set artist, get artist. Set price, get price. Set number of copies, get number of copies. These are the 8 methods you will get here, because 4 variables, 4 multiplied by 2, right? And 8 setter and getter methods you will get here. And see that. You can see here. Public void. I told you methods are public. Setter method. How we are writing setter methods? Public void set name, then string name, and this dot name equal to name. So why I am using every time this? Because this dot name will represent this instance variable. This is a reference variable. This keyword is a reference variable which refers to current class objects. Objects means what are all objects? What are all objects?
Name, artist, price, number of copies.
Generally, madam, I am asking, okay, here it is okay, this one, but generally in the class. So what are all objects you can treat in the class?
Integer values, int name, int I is equal to kind of a thing we can give, int long.
Swati, just think, I can make it as a static also, right?
Yeah.
Why integer? That also you will treat as a object if you make it as a static. Which are objects, and which are all objects in the class?
These dot names.
List.
I'm asking generally, madam. I am not, forget about this class. in any class, what you will call as objects. Objects means what? So what are the things in the class objects you call?
Above the class, below the method, whatever you are giving the.
I can declare static variables also, madam. Static variables also objects. So how many times I need to tell? All instance variables and instance methods are the objects. Just now I clearly explained, right? Object means what? Instance variables and instance methods are the objects. Only instance variables and instance methods are the objects. So okay. So at least remember now itself. Objects means where the objects will store in the heap memory. Or why you will create object? Why you will create object? To access non-static methods and non-static variables, right? But all the basic concepts, if you forget, what should I do, madam? How many we did object creation? Why we created object also if you don't know? What are all the members you will treat as objects if you don't know? All the basics, whatever I explained, it's gone completely. That's what basic classes are very, very crucial. Just you're missing a lot of basic points. I don't know what to do. Just now also I explained cat class object creation. For what purpose we created object? Non-static variable representation and non-static method calling purpose. Objects means non-static variables and non-static methods. These two only objects. Okay. So this keyword, this is a reference variable which refers current class objects. Current class objects means current class instance variables, current class instance methods, and constructor also. These are the things will be treated as objects. To represent your instance variable, and you will use this keyword. Because when you will represent this keyword, when your parameter name and instance variable name is same. When your parameter name and instance variable name is same, then how can you differentiate instance variable and parameter name? To differentiate that, you're using this keyword. This dot name will represent the instance variable, and right side the name will represent the method parameter. That's the first advantage of this keyword. Second advantage is you can create a constructor. One constructor you want to call in another constructor in the same class. You will use this keyword. Third advantage, one instance method you want to call in another instance method in the same class, then you will use this dot, that non-static method. This means always remember current class objects it represents, not other class objects. Current class object. This means you are calling current class variable, instance variable, not other variables, only instance variables. This dot, the variable name is there, that means it's an instance variable. Now this dot name means it's a instance variable. This dot artist means that is a instance variable. You are assigning whatever the value you are passing, that value you are assigning to instance variable. And here also, whatever the value you are passing to this method, setter method, and that value you are storing in the instance variable. This dot name represent the instance variable. This dot artist will represent the current class instance variable. This dot, whatever it is, set price will represent the current class instance variable. So this is the every instance variable if you want to represent in the current class, then you can use this keyword. If the parameter name and instance variable name is same, to represent that instance variable, we will use this keyword. Any questions here? If you don't use this keyword, whatever the value you are assigning here, that is not going to set to the instance variable. It's not going to set to the instance variable. If you don't use this keyword, that is not going to be treated as an instance variable. Suppose I am not using this here. Now artist equal to artist I did. Now this and this left side and right side won't be treated as a, left side one won't be treated as a instance variable, and right side is this parameter, and then this value is not going to set your instance. Whatever the value you are going to set for your instance variable, it's not going to set to instance variable. Why? You didn't use this keyword. This keyword only will represent the value as an instance variable. Okay, that is the reason we need to set this keyword. And this keyword will refer current class objects. What are all the current class objects? Current class instance variable, current class method if you want to invoke in another method. This dot instance method you call. If you want to call one constructor in another constructor, same class. And you can use this keyword. These are the three advantages we should know about this keyword. What is this keyword? This is a reference variable. It refers to current class objects. Current class objects means current class instance variable it will represent. Current class instance method you can invoke. Current class constructor you can invoke. These are the three advantages. If you don't use this keyword, that is not going to represent if instance variable and parameter is same. That's why you need to represent always this keyword dot instance variable name. If you do, that part will be represented as an instance variable. Now this part is an instance variable and this is a parameter, this parameter. And here also see that this dot price will represent the price instance variable. Now right side one, whatever you are assigning, this value you are assigning to this, right, this variable, and this is an instance variable and this one is a parameter. Sri Lakshmi, are you clear now? Any doubts?
Yes, sir.
So
No. Good.
Swati.
Yes, Ramesh.
Okay, so that's all about this keyword. Now I am controlling my price. See that if price is greater than 0, then only assign your instance variable value price equal to this dot price. So this dot price equal to price. Else this dot price I am setting as a 0.0. Next, set number of copies, int number of copies. If number of copies greater than 0, this dot number of copies equal to number of copies. Then else, so this dot number of copies equal to 0. You set it as 0. If this is less than 0, directly it will come to else part. It will set the instance variable value as 0. Now how can you get this number of copies? You call, see that, public int get number of copies. Every setter method has a getter method. Same variable. See this is a variable name, right? Number of copies is a variable name. So get is a method naming conventions I am following. Get number of copies. This is a return type method. What type or data type? How you will decide this data type? What is the data type of that variable? So what is the data type of this number of copies? Integer. So what is the data type of this name? That's why the getter method you will get as a, see that. So setter method is a void only, but this getter method is, how can you decide what is the data type you need to write before this method name? What is the variable data type? That variable data type you write here. Then return name. See return type method. Getter method is a return type. You are returning the, you are getting the name value with a getter method. So basically what is happening is the private variables you are using in the methods to set that variable value through setter methods, and you are getting that variable value through getter methods. Directly you are not giving permission to other people not to assign any value to the variables. Through methods only you can set the value, through methods only you can get the value. That's a setter and getter methods means. So that's everything control on this class only. So nobody can change this class, and other people doesn't have a permission to change this class. Okay, and so they can access only methods. They cannot access variables because those are all private. So they cannot see these variables at all. And this is how they are going to write a setters and getters. then stock keeper, even stock keeper also. Private string name. So I'm assigning stock keeper constructor string name. See that instance variable name and parameter name is same in the constructor also. Then how can you represent? So I created a setter method name for this name variable and getter method name, and set a method I am calling in the constructor inside. Set name, this value I'm setting. So you can see here set name and get name. So this is a stock keeper name. Stock keeper name it is representing. This dot name is stock keeper name, because this is current class, right? Now current class is stock keeper. Now see manage album how we defined. So manage album how we defined, you see that. So album class, that object reference comma string name, string artist, double price, and int number of copies. Okay, see that album object, this is the object reference. Object reference dot set name method. Which set method is calling now? Album class set method you are calling. Before we call directly variable. Can you see this? Before encapsulation we call directly variable name. Can you see this? Directly we call variable name, but you don't have a permission now here. So what you are doing? You are calling the methods, setter methods. Setter methods, what it will do? It will set the name value, set artist, set price, set number of copies. He cannot give his own values now. If you give wrong values, and we have written a logic here in these methods. In these methods we set the value. In the variables you cannot write the logic, right? In the methods only you can write the logic. That's why you are controlling. You are controlling the variable values, how to give. For others you are setting that, and it's full control by that class. And then so album managed by get name method. This dot get name you can call current class get name method. And so album dot get name. So this album get name method, album dot get artist, album dot get price, album dot get number of copies. So this is how you can, all the methods only you are going to call, not variables. So this is the how you can control the data whatever they are giving. See, even they give a negative values also, so nothing will happen. You will get a zeros because you set like that. In the methods you set like that. If they are giving a negative values, so you assign to 0. We have written that. So that's the encapsulation process means. So full control over the data, what they need to set other people, and you're controlling in the methods. See that the advantages of encapsulation is, so see that in the above, with encapsulation we have blocked our stock keeper from assigning negative values, meaning we have control over the data. He cannot give his own data, so we're controlling. So what data he has to give. So we can make a class read only or write only. For read only class, we should provide only a getter methods. If you want to read only, you want to give and create only getter methods. For write only class you want, we should provide only setter methods. You can provide a setter methods. Control over the data. Another advantage is we can control the data by providing logic to setter methods, just like we restricted the stock keeper from assigning negative values in the above example, right? We restricted. So in the setter methods we have written the logic. Okay, if price is greater than 0, then only you assign the whatever the price they are assigning. Otherwise set it to 0. I am saying same number of copies also, if greater than 0, you can assign that number of copies. Otherwise you set it to 0. I am saying. So full control. I can write the logic in the methods, but I cannot write logic with the variables, right? The variable logic you are writing in the methods. So you are controlling completely the variable data by using that variables in the setter methods. Data hiding. Other classes cannot access private members of a class directly. Through methods only can access, but directly cannot access. So directly if they access what they did, they're giving their own data. There is no control there. When you apply the encapsulation, full control has come, and you're telling, okay, don't assign this value. If you assign also, and you won't get the, so what you set the value. you will get the, so what the value we set in the methods. Real time is ink is the important component in the pen. That's one. Medical capsule, another example. So this is the school bags is another example. Capsule, another example. These are all examples. So really you are seeing. And another real-time examples is when you log into your email account, so like Gmail or Yahoo or Rediff. So there is a lot of internal process takes place in the back end, right? You have no control over it. So when you enter the password for logging, then they are retrieved in an encrypted format and verified. Then you are given the access to your account. You don't have control over it. So how the password is verified, this keeps it safe from misuse. So it's encrypted format, it will, you are printing. So that will be verified. And it's not going to be so shown to others also. That's a one best example login scenario. And second real-time example is your bank account. I mentioned clearly in the beginning, your balance variable is defined as a public. Suppose you define a balance variable as a public variable in the bank software. Then your account balance will be known to the public, right? So do you like this? Do you like that? So your balance I'm seeing, is it so liked by anyone? No, right? So making your account safe, so declare the variable balance variable as a private so that no one can see your balance. So that to avoid all these problems, so we have to use encapsulation. So person who have to see account balance, then they will have to access private members only through methods. So defined inside the class, right? If you want to access your data, so through methods you can access withdraw, balance, inquiry, all this you can check, right? In your through method, those are all methods. In the ATM so screen you can see, right? Withdrawal, balance amount, and all this, right? Those are the methods, public methods. They made methods. Through methods you are accessing your data, your bank data. So that's all best examples. I'm giving a real scenarios. And so ask your account holder name or user ID or password for authentication. It will ask you, right? Each card has its own, it's linking to that your account. Then you are able to access. So the security is achieved by utilizing the concept of data hiding. So data hiding is nothing but encapsulation. Okay? How to achieve encapsulation? How to implement encapsulation? So declaring instance variable of the class as a private so that it cannot be accessed directly by anyone from outside the class. Second point, provide the public setter and getter methods in the class to set or modify the values of the variable or field. Through setter methods only you can set the values. Getter methods you can access the values. So getter and setter methods are widely used in Java programming language, but not everyone understands and implements these methods properly. But okay, we can understand. I'll show you how to do that. Getter and setter methods clearly, and it will set the value through setter methods for our instance variable. Getter methods, you can access the value whatever is set there through getter methods. This is the how you can access your variable, how you can set the value for your instance variables. You can give your own data at runtime. You don't need to hard code. That's the through setter and getter methods you can do. So that's all about theory. So let's move on to the coding. Any questions before going to the coding?
No, Ramesh.
Okay. So let's create a first class, album class. Album class you create. So again, I don't want to write public variables and all these things, but if you want, I'll show you the practically public, for example, public string name. If you make public, what will happen? I'll just show you. Public string artist, public, so double price, so public, so integer number of, say, number of copies. So I'll save that time. So unnecessarily we don't want to waste time. So just quickly create those methods, copy this, and so that we can save the time. I'll just take these methods. Okay, I'm creating this. Okay, these are the two methods we created. So instance methods, because I am not creating any setter and getters. First I want to show you the problem. That's why instance variables. Okay, later I will change. So next create a stockkeeper class. Stockkeeper class, take the main method, or you can just remove this. So I'm just giving quickly. So public string name of the stockkeeper. So we are just, so let's copy quickly. So to save time. So I created a constructor. Why this is okay? Stockkeeper. So whatever the name is there. Okay. So this error is showing. Rename it. Okay. It will be so moved out of that error. So let me take quickly this method. So manage album method also we created. See all the private variables you can call directly. That's why you're calling album object dot name variable. So you're calling the album variables here. Directly variable you are calling in another class. Directly variable you are calling another class. So now create a main class. Main. So take the main method and we are calling here. So I'm just showing stockkeeper we are calling. So let me quickly do this. Okay. So now see that we created a stockkeeper object and John D is the so name of the stockkeeper. So John D dot manage album. So in this class, this manage album method is there. I'm calling and I'm creating object for album class, and the album name I have given slippery when wet, artist name, and negative values we provided here directly. So negative values we provided, what is happening? So negative values, so it is printing, right? See that all the album is managed by this guy, name, artist to fine, but price and number of copies is a negative values. That's not acceptable. So then what you can do, just change a little bit. So now you change it to private. So change it to private. So let's generate the setter and getter methods here. So for this, you can generate setter method and getter method easily by Eclipse. Just to select all the variables which are you want to generate, source, getters and setters. Click on getters and setters. So select all and click on. So select all these variables, click on generate. So all setter and getter methods will be generated for you. So these variables you can move up. It should be on the top variables, and that will be easy for you. See that set name, get name, set artist, get artist, set price, get price. But price we need to control, right? So how can we control? If so price is greater than 0, so then you set the this dot price equal to price. Else, so this dot price equal to 0.0 you set it. So this is the one logic we need to write. So number of copies also same you implement. If so number of copies so greater than 0, so then you set the this dot number of copies equal to number of copies. Else, so this dot number of copies you set it to 0. This is the logic we are writing in the setter methods, so that control will be there. So everything I made it a private. See that now here it is showing error. So you cannot access this variable here because those are private. These are private. You cannot access here. So now how to change this? So you have to change it to so dot set name. Call the set name method. So directly we'll call the set name method. So name you pass. So same you do set artist. So artist you set it. Same you do dot set price. So you can do set price. See all the methods you are calling. So you are not giving a chance to variables. Set number of copies. That's it. and also generate setter method for this name, and you change it to all the variables, you make it as a private. So private, if you make, nobody can access outside the world. So only if you want to access, you have to create a setter and getter methods. So save source, getters and setters. See that for this also, stock keeper also I'm generating setters and getters. See that set. So here I'm going to call set name method. I'm going to give a name. So then wherever you want, you can call directly here get name method. So you can call this dot get name method. This dot get name, I told you, current class instance method. If you want to call, you will use this keyword, and so you don't need to call this album dot get name method. You call get name method. So this is also album dot, so get artist. So this also album dot get price. So this one album dot get number of copies. That's the advantage. Only methods you will call, so not the variables. So now you can give a negative values also. See that way other class I am calling. So even you give negative values also, it doesn't matter. So see that, so it is not going to set negative values for that. So this is the control for these classes. So even this person gives a negative values also, you have a control in this class in the setter methods, so that and nobody will set the values, and because they cannot access variables directly, so they cannot set the value directly, and they have to call through methods, and through methods you can set the values. That's what I'm doing. Through methods only, through this method I'm setting this value. Through this method I'm setting this value. Through setter method I'm setting the price. Through setter method I'm setting the number of copies. And I'm accessing those values through getter methods. Get artist, get price, get number of copies. So this is the all encapsulation, right? So this is the encapsulation, how you can control. So this is the all about encapsulation and OOPS first concept.